Welcome in Chiefs Kingdom to Chiefs Latest, your one-stop spot for everything Kansas City Chiefs in 15 minutes or less. It is your host, Calvin Silvers, and I have an action-packed episode for you today. But before we even jump into the action, go ahead and hit subscribe down below and turn on those notifications so you're not missing any news revolving the Kansas City Chiefs. As mentioned, we have an action-packed episode, so let's go ahead and jump into a topic that used to be a signature of the Kansas City Chiefs and a signature of Patrick Mahomes, and it's, of course, that deep ball. And I think we're going to see that deep ball revival brought back this season. As mentioned, it used to be a signature not only of Patrick Mahomes, but of the Kansas City Chiefs offense. It kind of is what blew them up into popularity. Of course, the winning did help, but we were seeing highlights of Tyreek Hill, of Patrick Mahomes, of Travis Kelce going deep. I mean, Mahomes at some point could have just thrown the ball 20, 30 yards down the field, just knowing Tyreek was down there. And usually it ended up in the right hands. So we could see that again. The Chiefs have the flashiness, they have the speed, and they have the talent to stretch defenses. You have speedy wide receivers. Now, you've had that the past couple of years, but of course, injuries have hampered what we can see from that wide receiver room. And you also fix your left side on the line. We'll get to that in a second. But as I mentioned, Mahomes was really efficient when he could be himself and throw down the field. I mean, if we're looking at the first 4 or 5 seasons of his career, he averaged 280 plus passing yards a game, 37 touchdowns in 4 of his first 5 seasons. And then what we saw not only 2 years ago, but also last year was just that struggle. Of course, as I mentioned, injuries to the wide receivers and also wide receivers just dropping the ball 2 seasons ago. But even last year, you were 31st in 20 plus yard completions, 47 attempts, which was the fourth lowest, 10 yards of completion, which was also a career low for Patrick Mahomes. And that shouldn't be happening, especially this upcoming year. You got Rashee Rice back. You have Hollywood Brown, who's healthier. And you also have Xavier Worthy, who ran a 4.21 40-yard dash. That was the fastest ever at the combine. And then you add your new shiny toy, your new draft pick, and Jalen Royals, who right now is having a really good OTAs, and the team seems to be really high on in his ability. I mentioned the O-line fix. You bring in rookie left tackle Josh Simmons. That's a mouthful right there. A lot of S's, but yes, Josh Simmons, he was your first round pick. You also brought in Jalen Moore, who is more experienced. And the good thing is Simmons is getting a lot of reps in OTAs right now. Of course, you might say, well, Calvin, is that really a good thing, if Moore has to miss some time? But I think one of the hardest things for a rookie, besides a rookie quarterback having to come in and just learn the playbook and play right away, is being plugged into an offensive line and having to go against the NFL's defensive lines who in recent memory have gotten better and better and better, and people will pay high money for good pass rushers. And you're getting that push for the deep ball from your coaches. I have my feelings and, thoughts about Matt Nagy as an offensive coordinator. And of course, Reed has a lot of say when it comes to offensive play calling. But those two are pushing and demanding, daily deep ball drills with Mahomes. They want their receivers to have that one-on-one trust. They want them to feel confident going on up in those one-on-one matchups. And of course, you just want Mahomes to be able to trust them. So they're working on that, utilizing that right away. I think it's what's needed. Of course, you've had success in recent memory without having to go deep all the time, especially with those stats I just read, but you do become a little more one-dimensional, and that hurts you down the line as the season goes on. And of course, Mahomes is a lack of pocket time, hurt receivers. I'm sure that hampered his confidence a little bit last season, so he needs to build that up. But when successful, when everyone's healthy, I can see Mahomes having 10 plus completions over 20 plus yards this season. That is my prediction. Let me know in the comments how many 20 plus yard completions you think Mahomes can have this year. All right, let's go ahead and transition into something that broke the NFL for a little bit there, and Jair Alexander being released from the Packers. The question now is, can the Chiefs land Jair Alexander? Because that secondary, as we know, needs help. All pro cornerback, as I mentioned, free after the Packers cut him. With L'Jarius Sneed gone, and that still, lingering the fact that you haven't really filled that spot. The AFC West is loaded in offensive talent and is only getting better, especially we should see Bo Nix take a nice little step this year too. But can the Chiefs snag Jair Alexander? Cap's tight, of course, but he wants to go to a contender, and that's why he was released from the Packers. He gets to choose where he wants to go. His pedigree's nice, 28 years old, 7 NFL seasons, 12 interceptions, 70 passes deflected, and of course, those couple Pro Bowls. Looking at last year, now he was injured, but he did have 7 games, 61% completion rate allowed, 77.5 QB rating against. So, as mentioned, chose to be released so he could pick his team. He rejected those pay cuts in Green Bay, and now he's in talks with Buffalo. But I think the Chiefs have an in right now. And it would be perfect to pair him up with McDuffie, who's coming off 2 interceptions and 13 pass deflection. He's shining. And then with Watson and Williams, they had 0 interceptions combined. Now, I get it's not all about interceptions, but I don't know if those two are your answer yet. You want to bring in someone with a little more experience, and then if you could lock down both sides of the field, that's huge. When looking at the cap space for the Chiefs, though, $10.8 million in 2025. If you're looking at Alexander's market, he's going to want about 16.15 mil, 17 mil, somewhere in that range. So the Chiefs will have to try to give him to a 1-year deal, 8 to 10 million, and then hope that, he plays well, and then he'll probably want to go chase his bag. And it's a fit. He's already played in cold weather. He pairs with McDuffie to stop the AFC West stars especially the offensive stars. And you need 2 lockdown corners in the AFC, especially with the rising QBs in the division. So I think Alexander, the fact that he's released, I think that's perfect if the Chiefs can get him for a 1-year deal. Plug and play. That's what you need right now. You need a plug and play guy. Of course, you would love to keep him for more than 1 year, but with his injuries, you just don't know. So the fact that you could bring him in that 1 year, and of course, he wants to go get his payday, but why not compete with the Chiefs? You know that this is a team that is likely to make another playoff run. So if you're Alexander, do you take, that year, get paid less, but play for a contender and then go chase money, or do you just get the money right away? There's an in for the Chiefs. I just don't think Jair is necessarily wanting that kind of deal. And of course, we got to talk about Kelsey's retirement here. It's looming. It could be scary to say, but we do know that all great players have to hang him up at some point. Hall of Famer, he's going to be 36. He probably has one more Super Bowl run left in him, whether it's this year or next year. But we shouldn't worry as Chiefs Kingdom here about the fact that, oh no, Travis Kelce has to retire. Well, we have Noah Gray. Noah Gray is the next thing. And then Jared Wiley's, he's upcoming. But I think Noah Gray is going to step up and be huge, not only this season, but in the upcoming season, especially when Kelce retires. Now, looking at Kelce's stats last year, 97 catches, 823 yards, 3 touchdowns, all career lows except for his rookie year. He did have 133 targets, though. So Mahomes still wants to go to Kelce when possible. But the thing is, with his career, he doesn't need to prove anymore. Over 1,000 receptions, third among tight ends, 12,150 yards total, that's third, 77 yards, that's fifth. All those Super Bowls, 4 All-Pros, 10 Pro Bowls. He has a great career. He doesn't need to keep extending it and hurting it, because if he keeps having these career low numbers, it's only going to look bad on the tail end of his career, especially if they can't capture another Super Bowl. 17 million a year through this season, and then no guarantees post 2025. So really, it's retire or take a pay cut and be that mentor. Like I said, 36 in October, not his best playoff performance that he's coming off of, and all those playoff starts are taking a toll on his body. All those straight years of winning the AFC West, all those straight years of winning the AFC, it takes a toll on your body. But Noah Gray, his rise, especially last year, was phenomenal. 40 catches, 437 yards, 5 touchdowns. He outscored Kelce, 88.5% catch rate. That's top among non-running backs. Extended through 2026 at 18 million and then 10 million guaranteed. That shows too that the Chiefs trust him. And not only that, Mahomes trusts him. He blocks like a beast. And then I mentioned Jared Wiley. That's someone you can't forget. 2024 fourth round pick, 6'6", 4.62 40-yard dash, 8 touchdowns in 2023 at TCU. So he's raw. I just think he needs another year or two before you kind of throw him into a more consistent role. And then the Chiefs too, they skipped getting a tight end in this year's draft. So they are banking on Gray and Wiley at this specific moment in time. And like I said, I think that's good. I think you should put all your eggs into trusting what Noah Gray can bring to your team. But will all that matter if the Chiefs can't stay in Missouri and stay in Arrowhead? Of course, we have a lot of tradition when talking about Arrowhead, but owner Clark Hunt wants a new stadium. He wants a dome. And Mahomes, he loves the indoors. Now, of course, like I said, Arrowhead has their legacy, loudest crowd noise ever recorded, NFL's loudest stadium, just overall, period. It's impressive. And of course, people will mention, well, Calvin, the weather, late season, playoffs, the cold and wind. You have that Miami game when it was, -4 wind chill. That doesn't really matter to me. And I'll get to that in a moment. But I do need to touch on the fact that Mahomes does play well inside a dome. 12-1 record, 3,652 yards, 26 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. And not only that, if you build a dome, you cut weather issues, you get to host Super Bowls and concerts, you can be one of the only teams to win a Super Bowl in your own stadium. That would be huge. And not only that, while you're hosting other teams for the Super Bowl, of course, your team gets brought up, the Chiefs' name gets brought up, the history of the Chiefs get brought up. So you're still getting free, you know, advertisement there as well. And I mentioned that the dome doesn't really provide that much of an advantage as much as people might say. I think it really only helps versus teams like Miami, Jacksonville, and Houston. I mean, those teams are weaker in the cold, and we saw that against Miami last season or a couple seasons ago in that playoff game, but everyone else can play or practices in the cold anyways. So as long as you're good, you're going to get the job done. The only time that I think weather impacts are against teams such as that. So I think despite the tradition, because I also don't want to see the Chiefs move over to the Kansas side, I think you build the dome, it's still going to be loud. I mean, think about it. When has a dome never been loud? I mean, look at the Detroit Lions. Their dome is loud as well. So it's not like you're going to lose any of the noise, any of that kind of home field advantage. Of course, the weather might not help as much when you face one of those 3 teams I mentioned, Houston, Jacksonville, Miami. But then again, how often are you facing them come playoff time? Well, that was it for this episode of Cheifs Latest. 4 topics that we had to hit. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit subscribe and leave me in the comments whether you think Jair Alexander should come to the Chiefs or even if there's a possibility to get him to the Chiefs. Until next time, I am your host, Calvin Silvers. Have a good one.